2 weeks ago, I ran a men's retreat in rural Vietnam with 7 other guys. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what the retreat looked like, why I decided to run a men's retreat in the first place, considerations before attending your own men's retreat, and what we didn't expect to happen as a group. Before you worry that I'm trying to sell you something, this retreat was only for people in Vietnam who attend my men's group already. This is simply my perspective in the hope other people are inspired to run a men's retreat themselves, or at least organise trips away with their friends. So let's get straight into it. So you might be wondering, Max, why did you decide to run a men's retreat in the first place? So I'm going to briefly explain that. I decided to start running men's groups 3 or 4 years ago. I felt isolated after finishing university. I felt like I didn't have deep connections and deep male friendships. So this is my men's group on the right here in London. Short while after starting the men's group, I found this, which is a men's rite of passage retreat. 5 days in Scotland, no phones. And I remember a specific moment on this retreat. This is my group from the retreat. We'd done a 36-hour fast in nature, silence, no talking. And I remember coming back around the fire once we were allowed to talk again. And that feeling of connection, that depth of connection, was so profound for me. I feel like I'd never really had that feeling before. I feel that in modern life as men, we have very shallow connections. And I wanted to recreate this feeling for me by running a retreat and also giving that feeling to other men, that depth of connection, that feeling of brotherhood. So that's why for years I wanted to run a retreat, and ultimately I was putting it off. Here's what the men's retreat we had in Vietnam looked like, and I'll pull up some images on screen. So on the first day, we went with 8 of us guys. A lot of the guys I already knew from my men's group, a couple I didn't know so well. But we travelled to the venue, we engaged in breath work, and we ran a men's circle, and that men's circle was focused on the fears that we're not facing in our life and gave us just an opportunity to share, get that off our chest. And then we had dinner, spent some time around the fire, and just kind of chilled out in the evening. Then the next day we woke up quite early, did some breath work in the morning, some movement, some qigong, a bit of yoga, walked to breakfast, and then we had a final men's circle and reflections on how we could face our fears more courageously in our day-to-day life. And then we took the cars back to Da Nang. So it was just one night away, nothing too crazy. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about our experience and what came up for us. But first of all, I'm going to show you why should you either run or go on a men's retreat. What did we actually get as men out of this experience? The first one is just a time to step away from your normal life. You switch off your phones, you spend time in nature, escape the busyness of the city. And when we're guys who are constantly on technology, constantly overstimulated and very busy, having a chance just to switch off is an amazing thing for us. The second is face your fear in a supportive environment. If you think you're going to go on a men's retreat of this kind and you're just going to kick your feet up, relax, chill out, then that's not the kind of environment you're going into. This is an environment of brotherhood where you're truly supported, and the intention is not to have any judgment to the people around you, but also the guys on a men's retreat will typically hold you to a higher standard, and that allows you to face your fear, share your fear, and explore what it would be like to live more courageously. And it's also about creating true brotherhood. When you start on a men's retreat like this, where we're all sharing from a pretty vulnerable and authentic place, then you're able to speak to those men and relate to those men in a deeper way. And it's why after that men's circle, we were speaking for 4 or 5 hours around the fire, deep conversations that we wouldn't have in normal life. And the thing is, from a men's retreat, you don't just want it to be a great experience in itself. It's about having new perspectives that you can bring into your life. So the thing that I spoke about, my fear, I then took those learnings from the perspectives of the guys, the questions they'd asked me, even just sharing what I was fearing, what I was putting off taking action in. By sharing that, I had perspectives I could implement into my life, and that's what we want it to do. It should be a container where we can share our experience, share our challenges, but also take learnings that we can apply to our normal lives. What you need to know beforehand, you have to take a risk. Just as I took a risk to book this Airbnb so we could all go away, the guys also had to take a risk on themselves. They had to take a gamble, do something a bit out of the ordinary. I think it's also, if you're organising or planning one, if you have an existing relationship with the guys, I knew, apart from one guy, I knew every guy on the trip, so that helped. And also make sure that everyone attending is kind of aligned with what you want from the retreat. And that was a big part of what made this such a success. Also, it helps if multiple people organise a retreat or even just the guys' trip, because I did almost all the organisation, I had this sort of a few nights of sleeplessness, came in, I was very excited still, but I had this kind of flatness afterwards because I'd put a lot of energy into it, into organising it, and sort of that was all on my shoulders. So if you can, split the responsibility between different people. And the biggest part is be open-minded. I went into it with kind of a structure for what I wanted from the weekend and a plan of what we were going to do. But then there was something that came up in one of the sharing rounds where someone asked for a particular sharing the next day, and we all went with it. We went with the flow, we adapted, and we were open-minded. And the next day when we did the second men's circle, there was a real depth of sharing. And I think we all got a load from that, from being flexible and not too fixed to the structure. The main thing we didn't expect, and what I didn't expect, I organised this with about 2 to 3 weeks notice. I had delayed doing this for a while because I had this real fear that it wouldn't work out. I'd heard of people who tried to run retreats or men's weekends, whatever, and it hadn't worked out. And the fact is, outside of some of the organisation, which I mentioned was a bit tiring, it was quite easy to get a group of guys together at short notice. I maybe only messaged like 20 people or so, and maybe mentioned it to another 10 or so in person, and we got 8 guys. So the thing that I think we all really learnt was there were guys there who wanted connection. They wanted that time in nature and self-growth. There was some nervousness at the start, but after the group sharing, after the dinner, we stayed chatting around the fire for 4 to 5 hours. And the thing I learned, and the thing I didn't really expect, is how natural this is for us. The fact that it was organised at short notice, the fact that I'd never run a retreat and still got 7 guys who came along, it just taught me that brotherhood is the most natural thing in the world. We need this in our lives. The problem is we don't have many of these spaces, and that's where men's retreats come in. They are one way of creating brotherhood in our lives. Ideally, what we can have in our societies is spaces where it's very easy for men to get together. Friendship groups where it's expected that men have time in nature, where they go on a trip, maybe they go hiking, fishing, hunting, whatever it is. But men's retreats are a structured way of creating brotherhood in our lives that we're otherwise lacking. We're missing that connection, that depth of connection, even just from the retreat. The next week didn't probably until the men's group that I run, I didn't until that point have that depth of connection that we had around this fire. So it's really important that we create these spaces. I hope this inspires you to either go on a men's retreat, ask your buddies to organise a trip away, whatever it is, but we do need more brotherhood in our lives. We need to go into nature with other men, spend time just slowing down in our very hectic and busy lives. And I hope this video gave you some perspective, gave you an insight into what happened on this retreat for us, and inspired you a little bit to take action to, if you're not creating a retreat, maybe going on one, maybe planning a trip with your buddies. Please share this message with a brother who needs to hear this, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.